Yeah, I mean, you're asking about the beginning of Thundr Bro. I mean, there were so many points where it was a turning point that kind of pushed me in one direction that eventually led to this company. And this was a scenario where I had been exploring, that conjugation of bodybuilding and functional fitness together, and I was really excited about where it was leading me. And it just so happened that, like, at that exact time, Dave Castro and Nicole Carroll asked Camille and I if we would design our own specialty course. And I thought, like, oh, perfect, yeah, we should do a CrossFit hypertrophy course. They're like, how do you take functional fitness and combine it with specific types of training to build your physicality and your aesthetics while
Right.
kind of staying functional? And they immediately shot me down, like, so quickly.
What
They're
did
like,
they
what do you mean?
want?
Like,
What type of course did they want you to do?
I think that they wanted Cami and I to kind of take over what was the competitors course, or they said you could
Ah,
create your own. And I was like, well, I'm exploring this really exciting area that I think has great potential, but they weren't very interested in even hearing it. They just thought, like, oh, bicep curls and CrossFit, that's stupid. And I said, no, it's way more. There's a bunch of science behind this. The physicality supports performance. It's great for injury prevention. You don't have to abort functional fitness to do it. You don't have to be a display model only. There's definitely a middle ground here.
right.
And so I asked them, like, let me just write you, I'll write a journal article at the CrossFit Journal. And I'll write an article kind of explaining the science and theory. Because at this time I was talking to some of the really smart dudes in the world of hypertrophy training. And one guy, Dr. Brad Schoenfeld, who's a good friend now, but was literally, like, wrote the book on the science of muscle hypertrophy. I was starting to really dive into these mechanisms and understand, like, how you could apply this to, a CrossFit gym. And so I started writing this paper called Hypertrophy for Functional Fitness. And once I wrote one chapter, there was always be like, hey, there's more to dive into. And I wrote another chapter and another chapter. And by the end of it, I had like 100 pages of writing that I had done, probably over like 6 months. And I called CrossFit, the guy who was in charge of the CrossFit Journal at the time, Mike. And I said, hey, man, like, I got this series of articles that I've written that would be really great for the journal. But what I wanted to know is, if I submit it to you guys, would you own it? And he said, yeah, I would own it. And I said, well,
Right.
screw that. I'm going to publish it myself. I put too much of my heart and soul into it. And that was the beginning of Thundr Bro, where I said, you know what? I'm going to need a website to sell this book. Along with the book, I might as well include a training program. So I wrote the 90-day Get Huge program, which took some
Of
of the
course.
big methods, and that was the first site. And I did this with my buddy Andrew Charlesworth, because I was like, hey, man, like, I could really use somebody to, like, maybe help me set up the site and help, like, fulfill the orders and collaborate on these things. So he joined me, and we put probably like maybe $5,000 into building a site, producing all these books. We had a Thundr Bro t-shirt, and those were our first 3 products. And I remember the day we launched the site, I was so nervous that Andrew was going to lose his money. And I was like, man, Andrew, he's a gym owner. He's got a family. Like, I really hope he makes his money back. We made his money back in the first hour. And I was
Right.
like, holy shit, there is a huge demand for this. And I was shocked, because all I was doing was kind of sharing what I was doing with my own training and stuff with people. And from there, it took off and, went in a bunch of different directions, all kind of supportive of the idea of performance and aesthetics.
I want
And,
to dive
that,
into, yeah. So before, earlier when we were discussing, we were saying, hey, you like this idea of performance and aesthetics, and you're right. I think a lot of people do want to look good. And I think you bring up something really interesting about the pressure around CrossFit workouts when they're for time and whatnot. Whereas this type of work, it really allows you to bro out per se. And there's a lot of fun attached to it. Like back when I was in high school and we'd be doing buys and tries days. And I get that. And so do you see most of your audience that is either on a monthly subscription or buys an ebook? Do they, because I see the way some people in our gyms use it, where it's kind of like this thing, they buy it and they use it maybe a couple days a week, they have fun with it. But it's not their only program. Is that what you've seen? Or do you see people who only use this, or do they use it as a supplement? What have you seen from that business over the last couple of years?
when I wrote this book, Hypertrophy for Functional Fitness, really, it was just one long argument for hypertrophy training. It was one argument with, like, here's why you need to be doing this, whether you're just doing your training because you want aesthetics, or even if your goal is forging elite fitness, like it is in CrossFit.
Right.
whenever I would go into a CrossFit gym and like, let's say I started doing some bicep curls, I could feel people that I could feel them
Like
kind of
judging
like
you?
scrutinizing me. And I was like, why
Yeah.
the fuck are you scrutinizing me? You want big biceps too? Like, why, you know, and there's this whole culture and a dichotomy between the two where for some reason aesthetics are diminished, which is insane because most people are going to the gym for aesthetics. So the case I made for hypertrophy was threefold. The first one was increasing your physical hardware increases your contractile potential, which means you'll be able to perform better. You know, most CrossFitters, the movements in CrossFit, they're so athletic and they build these really great like neurological motor patterns. You know, we talked about them all in the level one. You guys all remember, but they teach people how to get the most out of what they're working with.
Right.
What we're about is increasing their hardware. Like you've probably tapped out, you know, in terms of you've been doing this for a couple of years, you know how to squat snatch, you know how to do a muscle up, you can kipping, you found every single way to cheat, to be as efficient as you can in every movement. The margins for you to get better with that are probably very small. But most CrossFitters, for lack of a better word, have a non-remarkable physicality when you compare them to, say, like bodybuilders. So there's a lot of room for performance growth in just building people's hardware and increasing their musculature. So there was the first argument, was for performance. The second argument was for orthopedic safety. You know, I don't know if how banged up you've been, Jason, but my wife and I, most of our friends have all sustained like nearly catastrophic injuries doing CrossFit. And as we get older, these degenerative conditions tend to pop up quicker and get a lot worse. For my wife and I, was like, oh, our shoulders are torn, my back is bad now, and it's accelerating these common areas of breakdown like knees, hips, shoulders, where you tend to just hurt yourself quicker, where you have these chronic nagging issues. What's great about hypertrophy training is it takes out the high risk players that are associated with injury, like speed and load. You know,
Right.
momentum is the enemy of muscle hypertrophy. You don't
Yeah, you
have
can
to
work more
go as heavy
tempo.
as, yeah, you don't
Yeah.
have to go as heavy as possible. Like when you do a 1 rep max, that's great for building your neurology and how to, you know, recruit motor units and get them to synchronize and fire really hard. But it's not great for creating a biological adaptation like increased size. So you're not going as heavy, you're not going as fast, and certainly the complexity, right? We're not doing a ton of squat snatches and muscle
Right.
ups, but these are like foundational movements. And what I found, at least with my back and my shoulder, is that it took these areas, instead of breaking them down more, it started to fortify them more. And I was able to lay down longer stretches of training injury free. And then every once in a while, if I go, you know, test a 1 rep bench press, I'm like, holy shit, my bench press is way, you know, way better. But I didn't have to 1 rep max it every week to get there.
Yeah.
And even that's not that important to me, right? So there was the second one. And the final case was, you know, why not give your athletes personal fulfillment in wearing their work on their body? If most people are there for some type of aesthetic, right? They want lower body fat, they want more muscular, they want better symmetry, whatever it is. Why not be able to deliver that to them and not try to peer pressure them into a goal like you need to run a mile faster, or you need to do Fran quicker, or, you know, you don't have handstand push-ups yet. So those were the three main cases for like, this is why you need it in your program. And that was strictly for the person who's looking to do this in support of fitness.
Sure.
Um,
Sure. I mean, I
and
think what you're talking to an audience, like it might not be everyone, but there's a lot of people that are interested, obviously. You know, I think you bring up some good points. I mean, obviously what I've seen over my career, I mean, my volume has definitely decreased since I stopped competing professionally in CrossFit. And at NC Fit over the last, 13 years of being in the trenches, we've pivoted our programming tremendously from, 1RMs and high complexity to shifting to now having two programs that one of them doesn't even have any high complexity barbell or gymnastics movements, and really focus on the fundamental power lifts and additional movements. And we've seen a lot of success with our NCX program to kind of lean into some of your idea, your theories. So as your business kind of grew, I think this is a really important topic, and I don't know how much you want to get into it, but I am curious that you came up with an idea in your head. It was validated by your own experiences. For me, I kind of look at it similarly to my passion for bringing fitness to jujitsu. I
yep.
really love jujitsu. I've been into it for a long time. But I've explored it. To your point, you've gone and explored bodybuilding. You've been in the trenches, right? And now you can kind of marry the two communities. But what I wanted to ask you was, you have this beautiful framework, great foundation, and then you start your website. But being the athlete, Dave Lipson, being the Thundr Bro is a lot different than being the CEO and the founder. And I think that over time, you've probably had to learn some lessons from a business perspective. I'm curious what type of takeaways we could lean into for other business owners and find ways to kind of, all of us rise the tide. So you start off with one partner. And why did you choose at that time to have the partner? Is it because he was more business focused and you were more of the, kind of the vision or the brand and whatnot?
So, first off, like, I think some of us sometimes make the mistake of thinking because I was a good athlete, or because I'm a world-class trainer, or because I have a big following, that my business should be thriving, right? Because I
Yep.
can do that one thing really well. So I'm
Yep.
entitled to having a successful business. But, it's just like when we talk about fitness, like, you can't just be good at what you're good at. You also have to address your weaknesses to ultimately be successful, because if you don't, they're going to hurt you in the future. Like, you can be the best businessman in the world, but if you don't have the training knowledge, it's not going to work. You can be the best trainer in the world, but if you don't have the business knowledge, you're going to be held back.
Right.
So you have to find a way to attack business the same way you would attack your own training, of being like, okay, for me, from my perspective, what I love about training is leaving the day feeling like I got a little bit better, like a little bit. I'm 1% better today, or there's some kind of progress happening. When it gets really frustrating is when you feel stagnant, like, I'm just not getting stronger, or my weight's not going up or down, or whatever it is. So from my perspective, I just wanted to find a way to get one more member each day. That's it. I just wanted one more member each day. And when I started doing this, I was so immersed in exploring the method, in being kind of the spokesperson, in writing the programs, that I thought, like, man, like, I could really use help, like, running the back end of this business. And I knew that I could hold on to this entirely myself and be like, this is my business, it's all mine. But at that point, something would be sacrificed. I wouldn't be able to spend as much time programming and servicing the athletes if I was trying to figure out the finances on the back end, and dealing with auditing Shopify or customer service or whatever. So I needed a back end person. I needed a supporting role to help me where I was weak, because if I
Mhm.
didn't have that, it would ultimately sacrifice the customer experience and the athlete experience. And my number one goal is to give people, like, the very best experience when they come into Thundr Bro. They're like, damn, I felt like Dave underpromised and over-delivered. Like, I wasn't expecting this much attention. I wasn't expecting this much customer service. I wasn't expecting this much attention to detail and videos, or investment. So that's what I've tried to kind of focus on. Beyond the bottom line of how many dollars did we make this month, I think about how much impact are we having. Are, are are more people doing Thundr Bro, and are the people that are doing Thundr Bro crazy about it? Like, I want them to love it. I don't want to just have them come in and leave, but I want them, for this to be the most rewarding, fulfilling experience of their fitness career. And that to me is like the reward. And, like, like, dollars come and go, right? We have seasons where we sell a lot, we don't sell a lot. But when our Facebook feeds are filled with, like, memes and videos and people wearing their Thundr Bro t-shirts and loving being a part of the community, I know that something's going right. So yeah, like, there's a lot of facets to the business side of things that I think people who start in training, as you were an athlete, I was an athlete, we were strength and conditioning experts, but we needed to expand the scope of our knowledge with business. And that was, like, as much of a growing process as the first time you go in the gym and you're like, hey, I got to learn how to do this. And over time, I've learned some really hard lessons.
Yeah.
Which the biggest one being, I can't just tell somebody, hey, you take care of it. I can't just give the keys to the business to somebody and be like, oh, well, you still need to have a good idea. And in some ways, you should be able to do every single job in your company. You should be able to do it. You don't have to do it, but you should be able to do it.
Yeah, well, that's a great takeaway. I mean, so you say, hey, you learned lessons the hard way. I know we have here as well. But let's dive into that real quick. So you're saying, hey, you don't have to do all the different jobs, but you should at least know how.
Yeah.
I agree with you. There's definitely some jobs here at our business, especially like in the finance side, that I don't know if I could do, but I would give my best effort. But for you, you kind of gave up the keys in the past with different partners and different whatnot. But
Yep.
was the biggest learning experience. But then how do you do that, Dave? So how do you allow someone to help you while concurrently not micromanaging them and looking
Yeah.
over their shoulder? Because then it doesn't free you up to do anything. So what's that balance?
I think when you have your, let's use a team analogy, when you have your players, right, and you've picked your roster, you got to let the players play, and you have to let them make mistakes, right? If they make a mistake, that's fine. And although you have your eye on your shoulder, there's a level of coaching where you have to invest in them, that like, hey, like, whatever, the mistake was made, but you got this, and that empowers them, right? But when you completely remove yourself from that area of the business, where you're like, I don't want to know about it, I don't want to know the numbers, I don't want to know the taxes, I don't want to know whatever it is, or you set yourself up for failure, because shit gets out of control quickly,
So you're no
right?
longer the
So
coach. You're like the I don't even know what the analogy would be. You're not even
yeah,
you're not even a part of the team at that point.
yeah, exactly. Like you can't be completely on the sidelines. You still have to be able to see the field. And if something's not going the way you want it to, you got to be okay with being like, hey, that's not cool, or that's not what we're doing. Like my biggest mistake was trying to blind myself to the other facets of the business outside of creating the content and just coaching the athletes. And what happened was, a little bit here, a little bit there, where let's say there was some unnecessary spending, or something wasn't happening that I wasn't aware of, or fact taxes didn't get filed or whatever. Like, you
Right.
just need to be aware of it, so that you essentially are the safeguard. You are the bumper lanes to the bowling alley, and you're just there to make sure shit doesn't go completely off the rails.
Yeah, no, that's really
Yeah,
good perspective because,
yeah,
I think that's a really unique way of looking at like micromanaging versus kind of like being the head coach and you know what's going on versus not knowing anything at all. And you should at least be aware of what's going on. For us at NC Fit, we when it comes to finances, that's probably my least like passionate area, but it's also a
yeah,
very important area of our business. And when you have a variety of different businesses, what we do is we do monthly reporting where we sit down and we go over it. It's not my favorite part of the month, but it's actually a part where I feel at least I have a good idea of what's going on. I think that's all you would have probably needed to do, or that's what you do now, kind of moving forward.
yeah. I think a good comparison is like, going to the doctor's office. Like, you got to go and get a physical and look at your health markers every once in a while. You can't be like, I don't want to know, right? Or you can't just look at one health marker, well, my body fat's low, so I'm fine. But
Right.
you need to be willing to look at this stuff, even if it's going to upset you. And that's the thing, is like, we get wrapped up in so many things that sometimes we just don't want to know. We just don't want to see it. And we push it to other people. And then, unfortunately, if something goes wrong, our tendency is to blame them, when in reality, the buck ultimately stops with you. If they fail, it's because you failed. So, you got to find a happy middle ground where they have room to run and do their thing, but you are there to protect them from failing.
Yeah. I mean, the doctor analogy is also really good.
Yeah.
I mean, how many
Yeah.
times you don't want to go to the doctor? I don't want to, you just, yeah,
No, no, no.
I'm okay. Um,
Yeah.
and so with Thundr Bro, and the business, you guys have kind of grown over the years. Now you kind of lean heavily into like this kind of community side focus. So what platforms do you use right now? I mean, obviously you sell your programs through your website, through SugarWad, et cetera. But you also then have the Facebook group, and then do you have any other private groups, or you mainly use Facebook?
Yeah, like I was telling you this before, and I think it's shocking how successful our business has been able to be while doing things as poorly as we have been doing them with like our technological infrastructure. We have, it's in my perspective, that's our biggest area for improvement, is kind of like simplifying and clarifying the user experience and the brand identity, so that when someone comes to Thundr Bro, they know exactly what it is, they know exactly what program to buy, and it's easy for them to use, even if they know nothing about fitness or lifting barbells. What we did in the past is we started kind of by just patching things together. So we have our Shopify site where people buy books and apparel and challenges. But then for them to access training, they go to SugarWOD, where we host our platform. And then for them to get coaching, they go on Facebook, where we coach the large groups and have a community. And if they want private nutrition coaching, they go to another platform. So now our big goal is taking all of these and just saturating it into one centralized app. That's the Thundr Bro app. And that's going to be our biggest project this next year, is having that. The most valuable part of our business is the community. You know, like, dude, training is training, right? I mean, whether you're lifting a barbell or a kettlebell, like, yeah, you're putting stress on your body to make it change. But the community is the life of the company. When people love being a part of the Thundr Bro and its culture and you know, the spirit of it, and in my mind, the spirit of it is bringing thunder, is finding a way to win again, and it's got a very positive message, and it's certainly really fun and really bro. When people love just wearing the shirt and being a part of it, that's, to me, is really what's gonna ultimately be our success or failure, is building and nurturing the community. Because, dude, how many fitness programs are there out there?
Oh yeah,
There are
ton.
thousands of fitness programs out there. So, you know, there's somebody else doing bodybuilding or CrossFit or some, you know, some similar style of training, but there are very few people that have a community like this that just love being Thundr Bros. So that's something that's worth, like, almost like you're kindling a fire. I want to nurture that. And we've taken multiple steps to try to pull people in. So we have ambassador programs where, you know, we tell people, if you like doing the training, you love being part of Thundr Bro, join our team, tell your buddies about it, and be a quasi part of our staff as a representative of Thundr Bro. And then on our Facebook feeds, like, we're constantly bombarding them with, like, activations, weekly challenges, chances to win product, little types of, like, we do a weekly Q&A where they can ask me any questions. They post their stupidest memes after leg day or puking after leg day or something. And it's, you have to find ways to create that interaction. And I have people that are solely dedicated to engaging people on Facebook. That's their only job, is be like, hey, just get them talking, get these guys talking, because if they're talking and they're interacting, they're a lot less likely to leave.
Right.
You know what I mean? If there's no, you know, interpersonal communication going on, it's very easy for people to dissociate, be like, oh, it's just a program I do, it doesn't mean that much to me. But if there's, like, an emotional connection to this community and lifestyle, it's a lot harder for them to leave. It's the same reason why CrossFit's so successful. It's, you know, CrossFit is a program, it's great. Every program is flawed in its own way, but by far the community is what made CrossFit successful.
Yeah, I agree with you. And so over the last little while that your business has grown, now have you had to hire some staff? I mean, I know you have,
Yeah,
but I mean, but you have some.
we had
Yeah.
we had to hire staff, we had to fire staff, we had to, you know, go through a lot of different transitions. And essentially I had to look at all the people on the field and figure out, you know, who are the people that I want to be here in, like, 5 years from now. You know, who are my A players that are, like, varsity squad, the people who will answer a message in the middle of the night, you know, the people who really care about Thundr Bro. It's more than a job or a paycheck to them, but they love the message, they love the mission. Those are the people that I'm like, we have to find ways to integrate these people. And we've started, you know, we went from a staff of 7 to, like, a skeleton crew, and now we're building our staff back up again. But we have people that are, like, social media directors, marketing directors, back end, you know, administrative directors, customer service people, programming assistants. We have so many different programs. Like, I need someone to assist me in just reading through the programs each week, because if you have a program and there are thousands of people in the program and there's one sentence that's written incorrectly,
Oh, you'll know about it, right?
that means there are going to be, like, thousands of people that are confused what to do.
Right.
So I literally need someone to proofread everything I do to make sure it's idiot proof, and then be all hands on deck. If there ever is an issue, they're right there to, like, put out a fire, fix something or whatever. Because that's what I'm talking about when I'm like, under promise and over deliver. It'd be easy to just be like, here's your program, guys, good luck. And then, you know, if you don't know how to do it, well, that's on you. But I don't want that. I want you to feel like you are, like, a really valuable member of this team. And if you have an issue, your issue is my issue. So yeah, that's what it's all about, man.
So I got a question. if I want to get bigger biceps in less than 20 days, I mean, maybe if you're listening, what ultimately, so I know the whole bodybuilding thing is a lot of commitment. I definitely think from a CrossFit perspective, years and years ago, it was almost like ingrained to kind of hate on that mentality because we were searching for something very different, right? And it was funny for me because I kind of came from a bodybuilding background where I had worked at a conventional gym for a lot of years. So I never kind of got the whole like super aggressive towards bodybuilders because I knew who those people were and they were hardworking people. They would die. I mean, I used to watch a woman come in. If I'm not mistaken, she would drink like vinegar to get her pH levels appropriately. And then you'd watch these people reduce their water intake and salt intake. I mean, that was dedication at a very high level. Total tangent. But the reason why I have a question for you. So what did you learn from your bodybuilding competition? And then if someone's looking for just a way to get a specific muscle group bigger, I know we're talking about hypertrophy. What type of program is it? So how did you get ready for your bodybuilding? And then what would you recommend for someone? Just something basic they can go off and do.
Let me backtrack you, okay? Most people, a lot of people fell in love with CrossFit because it's the first time they got results. Right. And they're like, I was going to the gym and I was on the elliptical and I do 3x10 of some exercises and I never really got much results. And that's because they never worked out with functional movements and they never worked out with intensity. So there was no reason for their body to adapt. You know, the adaptation process is one of survival. Your body wants to do one thing, it wants to survive. So you need to apply enough stress to it to get it to change so that it can reach homeostasis again, right?
Right.
So I think most people that like, well, bodybuilding doesn't work and CrossFit works, so I'll do CrossFit. But what I've seen, and Marcus Philly and I, who's also kind of in a similar space, we both observe the same thing. When people go from CrossFit, they learn how to do functional movements, but they also learn how to work and they also learn how to suffer. And by taking those mental skills of like, hey, I know these athletic movement patterns and I know how to push myself. They'll do pull-ups until their fucking hands bleed. And
Right.
now I'm going to take that and apply it to hypertrophy. They accelerate massively. I mean, we have people that are putting on massive amounts of muscle because now they know how to work hard. Now they know that like you can't just go in and lollygag through the gym. You need to actually stress a muscle, usually to the point of failure, to be able to get an adaptation. And all we have to do is channel that intensity in the right direction to get results, right? So because I think in CrossFit, a lot of people are like working really hard and spinning their wheels, but you get to a point where you're just not getting much more results anymore, right? So I think that's something to consider is like when you come from bodybuilding to CrossFit and then maybe back to bodybuilding, a lot of these people are now achieving massive physical results because they've learned these skills. And now all it is like, you know, giving them the right protocol to be able to apply them. From a standpoint of like, hey, you know, I want to put on muscle, I want to lose body fat or whatever it might be. What I did with Thundr Bro is I took a principle, and the principle is we're going to blend hypertrophy training and some type of functional fitness together, more or less. Some of our programs might be conditioning plus like one hypertrophy finisher, and some of our programs might be 3 days of high volume hypertrophy training only. The protocol depends on what result do you want and how fast do you want it, and that'll dictate, you know, how we raise or lower those dials. So if an athlete comes into us and they're like, hey, Dave, I'm 155 pounds, I want to put on some muscle, that starts to point to bias towards one protocol versus another, where maybe the goal isn't like doing CrossFit and adding a little hypertrophy, but it's all hypertrophy training and like our Muscle Mania challenge where they're eating a huge caloric surplus and accumulating lots of total body heavy volume. And now all of a sudden they're like, dude, I put on 20 pounds in a month. Well, yeah, because you were actually training to get the result that you wanted, right? It's the SAID principle, specific adaptations to an imposed demand. If people are like, yo, Dave, I love doing CrossFit, I don't want to leave it, but I'd like to go through a phase where I just like, you know, get more bodybuilding in. Most people are doing our Muscle Anarchy program because it's 75% hypertrophy, but there's also a conditioning part of it as well, right? So they're still getting CrossFit in for 3 or 4 times a week. So they're not losing fitness, but they're still able to do that. And then the ultimate version of that would be like, hey, I'm going to do my class program. I'm going to do NC Fit's daily conditioning workout. And then I'm going to go into your book and I'm going to pick a finisher for my arms or my legs or my back or whatever. And I'm going to do that for 10 minutes every day. So you see how that scale kind of slides up or down, just depending depending on what you want and how fast you want it. And you brought up another really interesting thing about like the bodybuilding culture and its knowledge of specificity, both on the training floor and also in the nutrition realm and in the lifestyle realm, right? You know, the training can be so specific. You can be like, yeah, this is an exercise for your medial delt, or you're lagging in this muscle area, so do this special exercise because it really gives you a better quad sweep if you point your toes and turn them towards each other when you're doing a leg extend. I mean, how precise is that, right?
Oh yeah.
But from a nutrition standpoint, when I started getting into bodybuilding, I first found the best bodybuilding gym in my area I could find, which is a gym called Armbrust Pro Gym. And that's where Phil Heath trains. He's the 7-time Mr. Olympia. You know, Hani's in your area. He's his trainer. And I walked in and I could feel like, as soon as I walked into this gym, I could feel like, dude, you're at the bottom of the totem pole right now, right? You're no longer like, you know, in CrossFit, people know us, Jason. You know, they're like, oh, you've done some stuff, you coach for a long time, you know, you got a little bit of clout. When I walked in this gym, I was back to zero. and I said, hey, yeah, they're like, I'm a CrossFitter and I want to do a bodybuilding show. And the guy literally smirked at me. He's like, okay, good luck, kid. And so I just went to the gym and I kind of looked around and I watched, and then I started talking to some of the coaches and I started working with some of them. And then, you know, after I started making progress, they were like, hey, we're going to help prep you for your first show, and ended up winning the first show. And what I learned from the nutrition standpoint is, you know, I thought I knew about nutrition. I lived in a bubble, in this CrossFit bubble, where I thought, meats, vegetables, nuts and seeds, some fruit, little starch and no sugar, and, you know, quantities that support exercise, not body fat. But there are infinite layers beneath that, and infinite layers of suffering that I was completely unaware of. You know, I'd never dieted so hard that my hands were shaking before. You know, I'd never done like diets like this where like the macronutrients were so precise, the nutrient timing around the training was so precise. You know, the things you do 2 or 3 days on before a show can massively influence the way you look on stage under the lights. So like, there's so many layers to this that are completely untapped. And I tried to just take the basics of what I was learning and give it to the layman in the version of these challenges. So we have like a 30-day shred challenge where all we're really exposing them to is the idea of a dietary rotation, where instead of just taking all your calories off the bat, each week we start to wean you down in calories and increase your volume. And so that creates a very steady state of fat loss, where, you know, typically if you give somebody a diet, they might lose 5 pounds the first week and then plateau.
Right.
This is something where you continue to push. And as you continue to push, just like in training, you learn how to suffer through it. So what might have felt hard for you in week 1 of a 30-day challenge is nothing once you get to week 4, because we built up your tolerance and we've changed your metabolism over the course of that month, as opposed to saying like, here's your numbers, good luck. You know, so there's a lot of different layers to this, and there's a lot more than people give credit to. And there's no community more in tune with what food and exercise can do to the aesthetics of your body than the bodybuilding community.
Yeah.
Know?
I've seen it firsthand. I know you have as well. It's actually, it's quite remarkable. It's just a totally different beast from anything else, right? I mean, you look at the jiu-jitsu space, it requires a certain type of mindset and work effort because of what you're about to go do. You look at the CrossFit space, same thing. If you look at the bodybuilders, same thing. They're just different. And so, you know, for you guys at Thundr Bro, I'm super excited for what you guys have planned. It's so exciting for me to watch how you navigated your career. And I wanted to ask you, from working seminars for CrossFit and now being full-time for Thundr Bro, what is it like to have a career in something else? Because you were full-time with CrossFit, right? What was it like having full-time career and then shifting to something new? And how did you do that? Or was it just like a little bit easier than I'm making this sound? Did it just naturally occur?
You know, Jason, I know that you've had the same experience as me. I got a lot of pushback. When I started doing this stuff from my colleagues, the CrossFit HQ staff. They're like, why are you doing that? Why? I told them I was doing a bodybuilding show and they laughed at me. And they're like, that's fucking stupid or whatever. And I was like, no, I'm doing this for a reason. I really want to explore this. I want to understand it, not just like understand the information, but have the experience and the knowledge of doing it. And you know, it was kind of, in a lot of ways, like kind of poo-pooed. And yeah, that sucked. I thought that sucked quite a bit. But in the meantime, as soon as I won a show, as soon as I started having people come into the program and start doing the training, their attitudes started to change, like internally. You know, like in our program, like we got a lot of HQ staff members that are in like our Thundr Bro programs,
Right.
but maybe they wouldn't publicly say it. But that was kind of difficult for me to feel that pushback, right?
But how about
Because
from a job perspective? I guess what I'm curious about,
yeah,
like at one point, did you have to cut it off, or
yeah,
because I'm more curious about people who are in a current career and want to pivot to something new. How did you know when to pivot? You know what I mean?
it for me, it wasn't much of a leap. It was the only thing that made sense. On CrossFit seminar staff, like I'd reached the end of my journey there. There was nowhere else to go. Was I going to be a flow master? I'd been reciting the same lines that Greg Glassman said in 2003 for like 10 fucking years. You know, like I wanted something new. I need to develop my own information. I needed to come up with my own my own methods, and not just just repeat what somebody else said or do. I had to figure out my own truth. And so there was no longer, there wasn't much of a future there. And at the same time, as I started to kind of like, yeah, there's not really much more to do in this job, Thundr Bro started taking off. So it only made sense to be like, hey, I got this thing where I'm now, we're bringing in more money than I ever thought we would bring in before. This company is taking off, and I'm trying to juggle it between getting on a plane and teaching a seminar for CrossFit. In the meantime, I'm getting some pushback about what I'm doing. And it just didn't make sense. So I had to be like, you know what? This has a future. This really doesn't. I need to do this. That's it. It really wasn't much of a leap for me. And because, also personally, my proverbial eggs were no longer in that CrossFit basket. They weren't. When you create something, when you make it from scratch and you nurture it and it grows and you care about every facet of it, you get such tremendous reward, because it's not just the members or the dollars that are coming in or the notoriety. It's you. It's your DNA all over this business. Every person who came in some way is there for you, because you laid the groundwork or whatever. So it takes on such a deep personal meaning. And when you work for somebody else, that investment just isn't there. It's somebody else's company. They invented it. I'm sure Greg was really passionate about CrossFit, and it's his baby. You have your baby, NC Fit. But like, I think if you have the opportunity to cultivate something that actually does have potential in the future, you need to go for it, because that ownership is so tremendously rewarding, and it tears you up inside, right? I mean, it literally can get you wear your successes and your failures deeply, because it's your business. So yeah, I mean,
Dude, I love that, man. Well, anybody who's borderline gonna start a company, I think after this talk they're gonna run through a wall.
yeah.
Well, dude, I really appreciate your time. I'm gonna go get in some bicep curls before I leave the gym today, just in honor of Thundr Bro.
Nice.
And for anyone who's listening who wants more information about you, Thundr Bro, what's the best place to go?
Yeah, I mean, we had a couple different channels or avenues to go into. Probably the best one is just our main site, thundrbro.com. And that's where you can see all of our books and products and services and stuff. Our Thundr Bro handle at Thundr Bro kind of highlights the community and what we got going on. I'm at Dave freaking Lipson. But yeah, I mean, like, if you're interested in this stuff, I suggest like go take a look at what our athletes are doing. I mean, you can kind of see it at a visceral level. You're like, oh, they're doing kind of these, more unique methods, but with a barbell and dumbbells and a CrossFit gym. And then as you learn more, you start to explore, like, there's actually quite a bit of interesting and exciting science behind what we're doing. And that's one of our taglines, where bro science meets real science. So yeah, I would check it out there.
Bro science meets real science. Well, I love it, man. Love all the success. We will link all the different locations and different places you mentioned. And I hope you and Cammie and the baby and the family are doing great. And
Oh, thanks, man.
talk to you soon, brother.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Jason.